Captain America: The First Avenger is one of the movies I most wanted to talk about when I came up with the idea for this workshop series. In that first episode, I said I'd be talking about both movies I don't like and movies I do like but think have room for improvement. The first Captain America movie is definitely one from the latter category. It's a good movie, but I think it could have been a whole lot better. Let's talk about how. It's been a little bit since I've done a workshop video, so I'm going to run through a bit of a refresher. If you haven't seen the other episodes or just don't remember, here's how this works. I'll start by going through the things I like about the movie, then I'm going to go through the problems I have with it, and then offer solutions to those problems that I think will improve the final product. Let's start with the stuff I actually like. There's actually quite a lot. In the most basic sense, the entire first half of the movie, actually. I absolutely love pretty much everything the movie does up until about here. Let's get specific, though. The period piece setting gave Captain America an incredibly unique feel when put against the other existing Marvel films at the time, and it's just pretty neat to see a superhero thrown into the World War II conflict. This scene that serves as a perfect setup to who Steve Rogers is, as well as a great setup for this moment years later. The entire training camp sequence, especially this moment where Steve jumps on the fake grenade, and this finishes establishing Steve's core character. He'll never back down or run away from a fight, and he will always put himself in harm's way to protect others. This monologue from Dr. Erskine is excellent, as is Stanley Tucci's performance here.
Because a strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power, but a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion.
Dominic Cooper, playing a younger Howard Stark, is also a great addition, and the fact that Howard and Steve were war buddies allows for some great interplay later in the series between Tony and Steve. The entire war bond selling sequence is so great, and this is the best part of the film, in my opinion. But the relationship between Steve and Bucky remains the strongest character element of the entire film. Their friendship feels genuine and long-running. In addition to that, Bucky, being the stronger and more capable of the two at the start, leads to a great role reversal once Steve becomes Captain America. And this starts out as fun in this part here, but eventually it leads to Bucky's tragic apparent death as he tries to pick up the shield and is thrown from the train as a direct result of that. Peggy Carter is also an excellent element to this film. Everything about her is great. Haley Atwell delivers a super strong performance, the character in general just shines all the way through the movie, and her relationship with Steve feels genuine and strong, and Haley Atwell and Chris Evans both sell it well due to fantastic chemistry. She is definitely one of the top, if not the best, of the superheroes' love interest in this franchise. And also, the tragic element of them not getting to continue their relationship is actually the strongest aspect of the second half of the movie. Tommy Lee Jones is pretty funny in this as well and provides most of the movie's levity.
He's still skinny.
The Red Skull is a menacing antagonist, played strongly by Hugo Weaving. And finally, I love this whole ending scene where Cap wakes up in modern day. Following Cap as he runs out in modern Times Square in total confusion is very chilling, and I just really love that this is how the entire movie ends.
You've been asleep, Cap, for almost 70 years. You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I had a date.
Now let's move on to the problems I have with the movie. There aren't actually that many, but they have a significant enough negative impact on the movie for me. The first is that Cap's Howling Commando squad mates are super underdeveloped and don't really have much to do with anything in the story. Now I understand they aren't really meant to be the focus here, but I think the movie still wants us to care about them. Sadly, I don't think much would change if you remove the characters entirely and just had Steve, Bucky, and some random soldiers going around on these missions here. Now compare this team to Wonder Woman's team. In her movie, we spend a decent amount of time with each of them and get to know them and care about them. Now, this isn't the biggest problem in the world, but If you aren't going to develop these guys into full characters, why not use the screen time you have showing us more of Cap interacting with Bucky, Peggy, and Stark? Those characters and relationships are clearly the dynamics the movie is more interested in, and the ones that end up being super important down the road. Now on to the first of the big issues I have with this movie. I do not like the way the Tesseract is used in this film. They had what could have been a World War II movie with a superhero in it, but they chose to throw a bunch of laser guns and futuristic-looking tanks and vehicles in there for Hydra. I'm not talking about the Red Skull's comically large car or the helicopter tube thing. Those actually play into the intentional camp of the movie pretty well. But these weird guns and massive tanks just detract from the World War II scene design of the rest of the movie. This is the reason I don't enjoy the second half of the film as much, because it loses its visual identity because everything becomes too high-tech and shiny and science fiction looking. And don't worry, I understand we need to establish the Tesseract and how powerful it is. I have a way to do that in a more time period friendly way that I will explain in my solution part. I just feel that they sort of missed an opportunity to lean all the way in to the World War II aesthetic when they had the chance to. And it's disappointing because the sequences where they do lean into it are the best in the film. My other big problem with the movie is this. Steve's sacrifice at the end makes no sense. Based on the information we're given by the film about this plane and the bombs in it, there is no reason for him to have to put her in the water.
I gotta put her in the water.
No, Steve, you don't. Now, there may have been a scene that was cut that had an explanation for why he does this, but the movie pretty much shows us that he doesn't have to. We see all the little bomb things have cockpits, implying they need to be piloted to their destinations and detonated. He kills all of the pilots that the movie shows us, so there isn't anyone left to pilot them. We aren't shown anything telling us they are time bombs or something like that, so we are left with no reason they would go off at all. So why can't he just land the plane somewhere? Steve, you don't want to try and maybe do a smooth landing on that ice instead of slamming headfirst into it? You're still in the middle of nowhere. Steve, hey, Steve, listen to me. You don't have... Beyond this just not making sense, it also robs the final conversation between Steve and Peggy of some of its emotional weight. As you know, there's no real reason this has to be happening this way. And again, yeah, I know, we have to get Cap out of the 40s and into the modern day. I'm getting there. Alright, here's how I'd fix this up. For the Howling Commandos, either develop them more or cut them out. For the two bigger problems, I actually have one solution that solves both issues, and it revolves around changing the way Zola wants to use the Tesseract. In the actual movie, he uses it as energy to make tons of weapons and fancy tech, which, as I said earlier, takes away from the World War II aesthetic. What I would do instead is have him be designing a super weapon that requires the power of the cube to function. This would also fit in well with the era, as researching and creating super weapons was a big part of the end of the Second World War. That super weapon is the plane itself, and it is meant to detonate somewhere above the East Coast. It could have a pre-programmed destination in there as well, so Steve cannot take control of the plane once in flight. Other than this one super weapon, Hydra forces just use regular World War II era tech for the rest of the film, preserving the period piece aesthetic. So, we now have a super bomb suicide plane powered directly by the Tesseract, and that also begins to solve our problem with the needless sacrifice. The final fight between Cap and Red Skull can play out pretty much the same as it does, with one difference. When the cube gets knocked out of place, Red Skull goes to put it back in and is sucked up into space right as he's put it back in place. Now we are more or less in the same place as the original ending, but this time, the Tesseract is actually serving a purpose on the plane, where before it was just sitting there, I guess, and Steve has to put the plane down. The only way to stop the plane is to remove the power source. So he removes the cube and lets it fall through the floor, just as in the movie, and he sits in the chair and has his final conversation with Peggy as the now powerless plane heads towards the ice. His sacrifice is now necessary and regains the weight it lost in the official film. And that is how I would fix Captain America, the First Avenger. Good job, guys. We workshopped another movie. I will say that I was a lot less bothered by the problems I have with this movie upon rewatching it to make this video, but I still think they hold it back from being a top-tier Marvel movie. I'd like to hear what you guys thought of my ideas for improving the movie, so please drop a comment below with your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this video, maybe like and subscribe or share it with a friend. All of that is super helpful to me and much appreciated. That's all I've got for you guys today, though, so I will see you all in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.